So thank you so much for this gorgeous film. It really, it's such a treat to watch. It's the second time in 3 days I've seen it, and I can't wait to the third time. There's so many images, the camel eating the leaves on the top of the trees and the men lying under the tree that will stay with me forever. Anyway, it's great to see you again. I think we first came across each other in 1966 when we showed Shakespeare Walla at the New York Film Festival. And I remember I was in charge of film traffic at the time. Not the best job, but I wiggled up from there. But I remember arguing with Ismail about who's going to pay for the shipment of the film.
Yes.
Well, yes. You can imagine who won that one. Anyway, I don't want to talk about myself, but it's the. I just wanted to find out from you whether the inspiration for making this film was from finding the Afghan footage, or did you have the Afghan footage in mind all the time and decided to finally do something with it?
It says in the film, and it's not true really, that it was unlooked at for 6 years. I used to take it out and show it to people, to friends. We'd have to, it had to be projected. It was on print. It had to be projected on a we had a home projector sort of thing. So I did see it, and I never forgot it.
Yeah.
And over all that time, I must have shown it, I don't know, 10 times, 15 times, something like that, to friends, and they were always interested, but it never occurred to me to do anything with it until I showed it to Giles Gardner, who's English, but who lives in Paris and works for the Bureau. Actually, this film, it's strange, is the only one of our films with French nationality. But he worked at this production company in Paris called the Bureau, and I showed him the footage, and he thought, well, gosh, we can do something with this. Let me have it for a while. And so he took it all away, and then slowly an idea emerged of what the kind of thing that we could do, and it took maybe 2 or 3 years to kind of get it all in shape. And the awful thing is, and this is a mystery about the thing, the original negative of that film is somewhere in that house which you kept seeing. We don't know where. It had been boxed up, taped up, addressed to go to Paris, and was never seen again. It was never shipped and disappeared into the who knows where, into that house. So the film had to be made from the print. And that's why it's not quite as sharp. I'm sure today it would be better, but anyway, that's what happened to the original.
I was going to ask you if it was
restored. That can happen to many films.
Because to me, it looks so beautiful. I guess maybe the mist of nostalgia sort of suited it very well. But so you didn't have to treat it or restore it to look like that?
No, we didn't have to do anything. We had the print, and it wasn't it hadn't been banged up too much over all those years of seeing it and looking at it. It was okay.
Beautiful. I was very touched by the scene with you pecking at the typewriter while you're looking at the image in your home. I don't know why that was so striking, but it just seemed like such a sweet way to work.
Well, it wasn't my idea. It was Giles Gardner's, and I kept thinking, why are we doing this? Why are we setting this up in my room here where I work? And we went, but it was his idea.
Great.
It looked great. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And how else did Giles sort of collaborate with you?
In all kinds of ways. Some of the things he chose to say and some of the things he chose to show they counted for so much in the final film. Mm-hmm. Like the last line.
Oh, really?
About the cup that falls into the water.
Oh, nice.
How unimportant that really is.
Oh, beautiful. God. I was wondering, too, about the Barber text. It's just extraordinary the way it creates a parallel with your own self-exploration, too. And I was wondering, were you reading the Barber when you were in Afghanistan, or did you come across it later?
I think that was one of the books I lugged along. But it's very hard to read because there's not that much about his personal life and loves and so on. It's mostly about the battles that he fought and the countries that he took over and all this kind of thing. And you read it and you read it and you read it, and it all gets jumbled up. So but I had that it's a modern library book. It's such a classic. You can get it in any good bookstore. Do we have good bookstores? I don't know, but it is a modern library title.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful. His accompanied by those gorgeous illustrations. They looked as though they may have been touched up too.
Those illustrations were from a group of miniatures. Basically, I think they're in Ireland, of the Baburnama. It was Babur's story. When you say Baburnama or Shahnama or whatever it is, Nama really means story, and those miniatures are. I think they're in Ireland. I don't remember exactly, or maybe it's England. I think Ireland.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I'm glad they're intact somewhere. It was a trick because I don't know him as an historical figure. I don't know if he's well known, but I'm glad that you were able to find that parallel to some of your own story. And I was just wondering too if you had decided to make a film about your adventures and your travels, or if you knew all along that you were going to do a double film where it's not only.
I didn't know I was going to do a double film. The double film came about, and there it was. I just had to go along with it after a certain point. I said, well, why not?
Why not?
And by that time, my book had come out, Solid Ivory. I don't know how many of you know that book, but
sure do.
But a lot of it was suggested. Not a lot of it, but things were suggested in Solid Ivory that we could put into the book.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So you've done this memoir. Do you have autobiographical pieces of your life in some of your narrative films?
Oh, here and there. Yeah, there are things, but they're not. I mean, they're just ideas that I found useful, but they don't really obviously relate to me. I mean, they gave me things that I did in my life gave me an idea here and there to utilize something or other. Yeah, oh, sure.
Any one film in particular?
Oh, gosh, I wish you hadn't asked that. I should say, oh, yes, this, yes, it. But I just offhand, I can't think of one right now. Well, I will later on. 5 minutes, I will.
Well, I heard that Mr.
Everybody's going out. I'll shout that.
Would Mr. and Mrs. Bridge be one of them, do you think?
Oh, well, Mr. and Mrs. Bridge is a deeply autobiographical film, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so is the film A Soldier's Daughter Never Cries. A lot of that is. And some of that was shot in Paris, and some of it was shot in North Carolina. And, no, Delaware. Where were we? Delaware. And, those are very autobiographical features.
Yes, right. Well, actually, memoir films are very popular, and they always have been. I guess we can think of Spielberg's Fabelmans and Kenneth Branagh's Belfast, and most of Fellini and some of Truffaut. But I love the idea when it's told in a documentary form rather than a narrative form. I love the last films of Agnes Varda. Did you see those?
Yeah, sure.
Were there any other documentaries that might have influenced you or encouraged you to make this?
Well, I started out as a documentary filmmaker. Mm-hmm. That's how I began. And with my first film, the Venice film, then The Sword and the Flute. Then I got into feature filmmaking, but then I went back to a third documentary, which is the film I made about Delhi, called The Delhi Way. Later on, I made a film about an Indian writer called Neeraj Chaudhary, called The Adventures of a Brown Man in Search of Civilization, which was made for the BBC. And, that was about it, I guess. But
now, the music was perfect. Alexandre Desplat, had you worked with him before?
I knew him and had met him, and I think that music had been composed for another film, which was then not, it wasn't used. So that was just sitting there.
Yeah.
And except for one piece, which he kept out because someone else wanted, it was just, a whole score that was there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was partly done through Wes Anderson, in fact.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's good. That's right. They work together a lot. Would you consider doing a version of this with your years with Merchant Ivory, the 44 films, or is that just too hard to match?
Well, who would play Ismail?
That's right.
Who would play
He
Ruth?
was so unique. I loved him. He was just amazing. And so it's nice to get to know you better, because Ismail was such a voluble, extravagant character. And he was the combination of the two of you was obviously very fruitful.
It sort of work.
Yes, it did. That's great. And Ruth, too. Is Ruth with us still?
No, Ruth died in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
Yeah.
We were working on something right up to the end until she got really sick. And two things happened. I fell down and broke my leg, both bones in my right leg. And that happened. And at the same time, she began to have her final illness, which was... but we were working on something. We were going to do a version of the Aspirin Papers of Henry James. Mm-hmm. But not set in the 1880s when James wrote it and published it, but set in the 1950s when I first went to Venice. Uh-huh. And we were working on this modern version of the Aspirin Papers. And the way we used to work when we worked together on a script is that she would write her script and I would write my script. But usually I was supposed to write my script first, and then I would give her my script, and then she would use whatever she thought was good and throw away the rest. And so on. Not always, but,
yeah.
But that's the way we worked. And that's what we were actually doing. And I had just got off the phone with her, talking about the script and various things. By that time, I'd seen her script. And talking about things I either liked or didn't like, whatever it was, or changes I wanted her to make or what we would do. And then I put the phone down and I went out. I was to go to dinner with a friend of mine, and I went out of the house, locked the door, turned around, and my feet went right out from under me.
Oh.
And I just slid down the stairs of
my
the back stairs of my house, not the front stairs, and broke this leg, both bones. And that was the end of our work.
What a shame. Sorry to hear that.
Never went back to that.
Yeah. Well, she was amazing, too. But you were quite the trio, I have to say.
Yeah.
You must have won every award possible multiple times over those years.
Not every.
Well, you got your Oscar.
Yeah, well, that was for somebody else's film.
Oh, God. Well, are there any questions in the room? Yes.
If any one of us sitting on the other side of you pitched a film and we said we want to narrate it, we want to do the narration ourselves, we'd be kicked out of the office. But your telling your story was so lyrical and lively. Was it ever a question that that's the way you would do it or not?
I remember when it was suggested that I narrate it, and at first I was kind of opposed to that idea. I thought, oh God, I'm so old and my voice will be so cracked and so I'm trembly with age or something. So I thought, well, I didn't really want to do it. But Giles said, of course you have to do it. Who else can do it?
Your voice is
It's
very
you.
good.
So no, I mean, if you want to narrate something like that, you just stick to your guns.
Any other remarks? Yes?
The White House in the film, is that your house in Klamath Falls, or is that local?
No, not the house in Klamath Falls. It's my house in upstate New York, in Claverack, which is an old Dutch town.
And the footage of you with the red house, was that Oregon? Was that Klamath Falls? Were you looking out at,
A red house.
well, it was where you have like a storage? With all the,
Oh no, that's part of that's the property in upstate New York.
oh, it is, okay.
It's called the Red Mills, and it belongs to the Merchant Ivory Foundation.
Oh,
And a lot of stuff is stored in there.
yeah. So we didn't
Shouldn't be.
we didn't get to Oregon
No,
in the later years. Do you still keep a cabin there?
I do.
Yeah.
I go every summer.
Oh, how nice. Yes.
You use the image of flowing water so much in your film. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, this was to be a film about a city, about the people living along the Cobble River. And I don't know what that meant at that time to me, but I knew there was a river going through Cobble, and there must be people living along it. So it was just a kind of little idea I had to show that. Well, I did show it, but it was mostly the people in Cobble, as it turned out, very few people along the river. But yeah, well, I suppose I do see that. Yes, that's quite often, yes, I suppose.
With some of your images that correspond to your voiceover that talks about something else, they're sort of like little pieces of a puzzle falling in perfectly. You know, they're so beautiful. They're not exactly shot to accompany that idea.
Well, I think that
particularly.
was the cleverness of Giles Gardner.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, he pretty much edited the film.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he'd edit big chunks of it, and I'd see it. And we'd work on it a bit together, or I'd suggest this, that, or the other. And he would come to Claverack where I was, or I'd be in England, whatever. And I think I wasn't in England; I was in Paris. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's where we'd meet.
Great. Yes.
There was a small detail. There was a small detail that I admired when the dollhouse was made. Your dad took the extra time to put molding around the windows
Oh, it's
and
perfect.
the doors.
It's perfect, and you should
And
see
wait, I just want to carry that through. Then you took the molding around the small works of art, and then the window frame that we're looking at through your window in the apartment has this beautiful molding. And I just felt like all of them spoke to the extra little detail and care.
Well, I'm
and
glad
love
you're seeing
of
things
molding.
that
No, it did.
may
I
not
did.
be there.
It just
I mean,
all
I
went.
I
It
can
all
tell
went
you the
together.
molding around my windows in my apartment in New York are not anything wonderful.
But they don't exist in many places anymore. So to
I
me,
suppose,
it was beautiful.
yeah.
But the detail of your dad putting the extra love in the dollhouse struck me.
Right,
You know,
right.
I don't know what that meant, but I just wanted to mention
No,
that.
well, he was
extra love.
very careful, and my father must have done some research on castles. I mean, all the what's it called, crenellation or whatever it is, in which you, when the castle was really a fortified thing, you boiled boiling oil or you shot arrows down through those little holes, which are, it's like that. But underneath each of those is a little hole down onto the front wall of the castle. And in real castles, that's what you go and see to a real castle, and you'll find that. And that was, they would pour boiling oil and God knows what down on the people trying to scale the walls. And that's all there in that castle.
Any other questions? Yes. Oh, yes. Leon, I can't see you, but
I don't want to
go.
Microphones.
Not to get too personal, but I was wondering if you could talk about your lifelong love affair with E.M. Foster.
Well, that's not all that personal. A lot of people have, thousands, maybe millions of people have loved E.M. Forster's works. I hope they have. I didn't, when I first started going to India and working in India, of course I had to read Passage to India. I mean, it was a novel that I was given straight away by somebody and said, you must read this. And I did read that then. back in my early Indian days. And then I didn't much bother with reading Forster's other novels or anything else he'd written until we then got involved with A Room with a View. And that was the first time I really began to bear down on Forster, was with A Room with a View. And that was followed by, almost immediately, by Morris. And the reason for that was I felt that Morris was the other side of it's the other side of the coin, Room with a View. They were both stories about young people who are going to make a fatal mistake and who are lying to themselves about what their future life should be and what their present life ought not to be, which was love and marriage with someone. And it's the same for both novels, and that's what inspired me to go on and do to make Morris. And that's as far as I really plan to go. So, well, no, it wasn't, but I mean,
Just the beginning.
we went, after that, we did other things, but there's still some novels to be done, other things.
Do you want to talk about that? About what you want to do?
No,
now?
I mean, it's not in the realm of possibility. And anyway, I don't feel I probably would go on now and that sort of thing.
Well, you have left behind a lot of
Well,
stuff.
that's for someone else to do, isn't it?
Yeah, right. We have time for one more question. Yes.
I would love you to recall the early days with your partner, your lifelong partner. It was beautiful in the film, the still photographs and how you met. He was in the audience of a lecture you were giving, and I just wondered if you'd want to talk about those early days together.
Sure. I mean, I was showing the Indian consulate in New York on East 64th Street was showing The Sword and the Flute, which was the film about Indian miniatures. And they just were screening it for people. I mean, they had screenings all the time of films. And so I went along to that. And someone, well, the Saeed Jaffrey was a great friend of Ismail's. I didn't know that. And so was his wife Madhur Jaffrey, the writer and the great cook. And they said, "Oh, you got to go see this." And Saeed he'd spoken the narration in The Sword and the Flute. So Ismail came to see the film, but I had never met him. And then afterwards, he just came up to me. I came out and was standing there, and he just came up and said how much he liked the film, and we started talking. And later on, we went and had coffee and stuff like that.
Well, it's so great to see you again, James, after all
Thank
these
you.
decades, and to see your exquisite film. And I wish it a long, long life, and a lot of people seeing it.
I haven't seen it that often myself
Yeah.
because, as I say, it's a French film made in France, and it's there's not been a distributor for it here, though it's had a few screenings. It was at the New York Film Festival. And ultimately, it will be distributed, I know, but
Good. Well, it's something to be proud of.
thank you.
Thank you.